Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, the Real Joe Quinn, recording this on Thanksgiving Eve. This will not be our regular recording day as far as Wednesdays. We're still going to do Tuesdays, but last I know we've done the last couple of weeks has been on a Wednesday, but you will be receiving this on Thanksgiving. But normally our regular schedule is going to be Tuesdays, and you'll get the podcast on Wednesdays. Episode 982, Hip Hop's Greatest Disruptor. We'll talk about that later on in the podcast, of course, with the release of GNX and Kendrick Lamar. But as always, we begin with the NFL's game of the week. It wasn't easy selecting one, but this actually took place last Thursday, with Cleveland shocking the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-19. This was a kind of like a ho-hum game until the fourth quarter. And, this was a 10-6 game going to the fourth quarter. Then you had a wild fourth quarter. A couple of games like that came about like that during this week. During this week in the NFL, this week 12 in the NFL. 27 points scored in the fourth quarter. Pittsburgh continues to struggle in Cleveland. Of course, the weather. You had this. It was snow, which is, you want to call that equalizer, I guess. Both teams are cold weather teams, Pittsburgh and Cleveland. So I don't think I don't think it provided any particular advantage or disadvantage for either team, to be honest with you. In a game where, frankly, Jameis Winston and the Cleveland rushing game really wasn't good. To be perfectly honest with you, Cleveland only had in this game under 300 yards of offense, 304 yards of offense only for Cleveland in this game, but and they had 3 turnovers. So really, one of those losses, and Pittsburgh also controlled the time of possession. One of those losses where, if Pittsburgh had been playing great football up until this point, but these Thursday night games are tricky, especially on the road, especially in the division. This kind of was a game that you could kind of see coming. Pittsburgh coming off a win against Baltimore. So the physicality of that game, that was an extremely physical game when they played Baltimore last week. Again, short week. I didn't think Cleveland would win this game, but I'm not surprised in the least bit that Cleveland did win this game. Cleveland still has some talent. Myles Garrett in the first half was out there just destroying people. Had 3 sacks in the first half. Just terrorized the Pittsburgh offensive line, and they could not control him whatsoever. He ended up Garrett for the game with 3 sacks and 5 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss. Quarterback hits. He was just absolutely all over the place. Had 3 of Cleveland's 4 sacks. It was just all over the place, and we know how dominant of a player that he can be. But with that, with this loss, Pittsburgh is still in first place. Pittsburgh still has a chance to be a top 3 seed in the AFC. In the AFC, they're going to make the playoffs. Pittsburgh definitely is going to make the playoffs. But again, the division will come down to the next time they play Baltimore. Baltimore in late December. That will decide the division for sure. As Baltimore, then we'll talk about that game later on. The podcast is at 8-4, so just a half game up. There's still a half game up on Baltimore, but of course they have the tiebreaker, and Pittsburgh still has the tiebreaker. So not a bad loss for Pittsburgh. As far as Cleveland goes, Jameis, I don't anticipate that Jameis Winston will be on the team for next year. Will be on the team next year as a starter, maybe as a backup. I don't think he's performed well enough to get starting consideration around the league. He's had one good game for the most part, but he does have wins. He has led them to wins over Pittsburgh and Baltimore in the past month. So it all hasn't been too bad from that standpoint, as far as Jameis Winston's performance. We're going to immediately get into the deep, before we get to the Fade Four, we're going to immediately get into the deep dive. Of course, Kendrick Lamar released a surprise album, GNX, this past on Friday. The album is 12 songs, 44 minutes. Of course, its title is named after one of the coldest cars in the 80s. Anybody know anything about Grand National? The Grand National was like Knight Rider. I knew someone, close friend of the family, who had a Grand National, rode in it many times. That car was just, like I said, you felt like when you ride in that car, you felt like it was Knight Rider. You felt like you were Knight Rider. And to be honest with you, it was that cold of a car, 0 to 60 in like 13 seconds or something. So just straight black. Just one of the coldest cars in the 80s. He chooses that car as his album title and the album cover. And the album is, from a sonic standpoint, is a phenomenal album. This is an album that, if you were somebody who criticized Kendrick Lamar for Mr. Morale back in 2022 for it being seemingly depressing, or you have to be in a certain mood to play, I heard a lot of that in regards to Mr. Morale. Then this album just destroys that, because this album you can take to the club. This album, from a sonic standpoint, it has an 80s type feel to it. In some of the songs, he has SZA in 3 of the songs, and again, from start to finish, this is a phenomenal album. Again, I'm not going to sit up here and say that it's better than Miss Morale. Again, with Kendrick Lamar, with the lyrics, they take those to try to break down the lyrics, and to try to, like, it really takes months and years, basically, for it to play out. Yeah, I'm not getting to this immediate comparing this album to his past albums. It's just, you just can't do that with a Kendrick Lamar. I will say this: it definitely, and by the way, it definitely would be amongst, in a conversation for album of the year. Would I have it as album of the year? Probably not. I still say Doechii or Schoolboy Q, but it's not even about that. It's about this album capping off one of the dominant years that a rapper has had in a long time. This 2024 has been the year of Kendrick Lamar. This album will be the fastest rap album to hit number one. To hit number one in 2024. The entire album has the entire album, which is 12 songs, take up the top 12 spots on Apple's playlist, iTunes playlist, as far as the rankings. Is projected to be the most streamed hip hop album of 2024. So again, amongst destroying Drake, having one of the songs of the year, Not Like Us, and we'll get to that later on in the podcast, this caps off, again, one of the great years that a rapper has had in a long, long time. I mean, you can go back to maybe, like Snoop in 93, or you want to say Kanye in 2010. No album, like, you'd be hard pressed to find a rapper that's had this type of year, just all around. I mean, again, you take down the number one guy, the guy who was the number one guy in Drake, take him down, and we have a lot on Drake. We'll talk, and I'll say that for real thoughts, because I couldn't even merge what transpired after this album had dropped. We'll talk about that later on in the podcast. But you take down the number one guy in the rap industry, you come out with, your songs. Now, again, he's going to have a song, his songs are going to be number one, on Billboard charts, which it depends on which one, probably squabble up. And this album is going to do ridiculous numbers. They're projecting it to do to stream anywhere from like 400 million, 350 to 400 million streams, maybe even more than that. And most importantly, you look at Kendrick Lamar, and I titled this episode, Hip Hop's Disruptor. He is the modern day disruptor of hip hop. And being a disruptor in hip hop does not come without criticism. It doesn't come, you can't be PC. You can't be somebody, you got to be different. to be a disruptor in hip hop, in today's hip hop. A lot of people are afraid, are scared to be disruptors in hip hop. Period. So, I would say NWA was a hip hop disruptor as a group. Tupac Shakur was one as an individual artist. There are not too many guys, not too many people in the history of the genre that have been disruptors of hip hop. I would put KRS One as somebody like that. Maybe maybe Nas. This guy is an absolute hip hop is an absolute disruptor because he does not give a shit about what you and I think about him, or he doesn't. He's going to release when he wants to release an album. He might go 2-3 years without releasing an album. He doesn't care. He really doesn't care. He's going to move how he moves, no matter what. And again, he doesn't care about the internet, doesn't care about the clicks, doesn't care about the social media. That's not who this guy has been. And again, in 2024, to not be a part of the machine and to not be a part of the industry from that standpoint, it takes a lot because the industry and because the industry is the industry. And this guy, again, has found a way to separate himself from that standpoint. Besides, let's put his talent aside. We know that he is one of the greatest rappers of all time. Like I said, I've said many times, the only two people that I can put ahead of him as right now is Nas and Jay-Z. That's it. Nas, Jay-Z, Kendrick. That is the list. Nobody else even approaches him. Nobody. Those are the two. Those are the only two that are even in the same conversation with him. And he's on pace he's on pace to surpass them, to be honest with you. If he stays at this current rate of making this high quality music and the cultural impact that he's had. So he has separated himself from a generational standpoint. As far as when you look at the top guys in the industry, in the rap game from a generational standpoint, he has clearly separated himself without question. I don't want to hear Drake, J. Cole, whoever, Tyler, Creator, Kanye. No, there's one guy. It is a one-person race, and it is this guy. And again, he gets the numbers as well as the critical acclaim. That's the difference. He gets the numbers where it's selling out the concerts, where #1 albums, #1 singles, and the critical acclaim. This album is an album for, this is an album for the producers. This is a producer album. This is an album for where all the features hit, where even finding a lady, I think she was a mariachi singer at the Dodger game. He went to the Dodger game during the playoffs, might have been even during the World Series. And this lady that he found her, and she's on 3 of the songs. Does the opening, on the opening track. So his creative genius is at another level, and someone who genuinely cares about hip hop, and it reeks in his music. He genuinely cares about hip hop, and you can tell this album, again, 44 minutes, replay value, straight to the point, 12 songs, and sonically one of his best albums from a sonically. Again, I'm not going to put it in the category of To Pimp a Butterfly or Good Kid, Mad City, or even Damn for that matter. So I'm not even putting it in that category. But this was this album was a culmination again of somebody having one of the greatest years in hip hop that we've seen in over a decade, maybe even in 20 years. Like, maybe Tupac in '95 when you had Me Against the World. You had Me Against the World, All Eyes on Me. I think it was Me Against the World was the one, but even the Me Against the World album doesn't compare to this album. But I'm just talking about in terms of guys who were at the top of the game and had the rap game by the throat. And right now he has it by the throat without it. Seemingly he is the guy right now in the rap game. He's the #1 guy. No, there's not even a question about it. Drake had that title for well over a decade. Maybe you want to say a decade, at least a decade, maybe even 12 to 13 years. without question, Kendrick Lamar is the guy in all the hip hop right now. Hey, the Eagles are back to being. They dominate the Rams 37-24, 37-20. The Eagles absolutely are back to being Super Bowl contenders. There's no two ways about it. They had 45 carries for 314 yards, of course, led by a just virtuoso performance by one Saquon Barkley, who had 255 yards rushing. Saquon Barkley right now is just 713 yards short of Eric Dickerson's all-time record of 2105 that Dickerson set that magical year, I believe, 1984, the single season rushing record. Saquon Barkley has thrust himself squarely into the MVP voting. If he gets 2,000 yards, and the Eagles continue to win at the rate that they're winning, they finish as like one of the top two seeds, one or two. Because right now they're only a game behind Detroit on the number one seed. If that happens, I think Saquon Barkley will be the MVP. Remember, right now, I mean, I would favor Josh Allen because Josh Allen has been fun. Josh Allen, again, has nothing around him with Buffalo. Buffalo does not have a lot of talent around him, and they are in a tougher conference in the AFC. But no quarterback, including Josh Allen, is having a lights out year like that. The guy is having statistically the most dominant year. Well, there are two guys. I mean, Lamar Jackson has been phenomenal, but people will get voter fatigue on Lamar Jackson. They'll say, hey, he's never won a Super Bowl, and he would have 3 MVPs. So there will be some voter fatigue for Lamar Jackson. And Joe Burrow's on a bad football team. So Joe Burrow, we mentioned earlier, Joe Burrow could have 40 touchdowns and under 10 interceptions, but I can't give you MVP if your team doesn't make the playoffs. So Saquon Barkley definitely has a shot at winning MVP. If he breaks the single season rushing record, he will be MVP. I promise you that he absolutely will be MVP. He has, the Eagles have an excellent offensive line. He's went on this stretch where remember earlier in the season we were talking about Derrick Henry. Like Derrick Henry was leading the league in rushing by a lot early in the season. He has surpassed Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry has a chance to get 2,000 yards as well, and he's been phenomenal. But Barkley has been the best offensive player in football up until this point. He's been one of the best players in football, to be honest with you. And right now, what the Eagles are doing, listen, the Eagles have gotten back to what they were a couple of years ago. Dominant defensive team, great with the rushing attack. They have the weapons on the outside. Devontae Smith, and of course, A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts has not thrown the ball as well as he has during his MVP season or when he finished runner-up in the MVP a couple years ago. So that's something to keep your eye on if the Eagles are going to win the championship. But the Eagles have to be mentioned. They have to be mentioned amongst the teams that can win a championship because they're playing great defense. They're playing lockdown defense. Their defense is back to what it was a couple of years ago. Last year seemingly was an aberration when they were horrible defensively, and it really started to show after they started out 10-1. They fell apart defensively, including when they lost the playoff game to Tampa Bay at home. So that again, the Eagles clearly are back into the mix as a Super Bowl team. They are the second best team in the conference behind the Detroit Lions, who are playing the best football out of any team in the league right now. But they match up with Detroit because the Eagles defense can stop the run, and they would force, I would love to see that matchup in the playoffs because it would be a contrast in styles, basically strength on strength. Could Detroit handle Saquon Barkley? What would the Eagles do with Detroit's rushing game and their offensive line? So and Detroit's defense, by the way, has started playing better, even despite not having Aiden Hutchinson, who is their best defensive player for most of the season with the broken leg. But that would be a heavyweight matchup if that were to happen in the conference in the NFC Championship. Kansas City survives Carolina 30-27. They improved to 10-1 on the season. Kansas City had 165 yards rushing. Now, again, I understand Now, I understand the fact that people, well, I don't understand the fact that people all of a sudden are down on Kansas City now. Excuse me, they're vulnerable. The defense is slipping. Don't be fooled by this. First of all, Carolina has played better football over the past couple weeks, despite their record. That's number one. Number two, you're playing a team, non-conference, on the road that you know that you're clearly better than. It was clear to me that Kansas City did not take this game seriously. It was clear it's hard to get up for a team like Carolina. I'm sorry, they are that awful. They are one of the worst teams in the NFL. It's hard to get up for that team. Kansas City get the benefit of the doubt because they are 2-time Super Bowl champions, and there's no team they understand winning at a level that no other team in the league understands. They know how to win. Period. Now, over the last 5 games, Patrick Mahomes has picked it up: 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, completing 71% of his passes. Haven't heard enough talk about that, to be honest with you. So he's picked up his play, something to keep your eye on. And the bottom line is Kansas City is waiting for the playoffs. They're ready. They're like a regular. They're like a team that's coming off a championship that the regular season just doesn't move them like that. And they're still 10-1, and still have wins over Baltimore. Still have some big time wins. They lose. Their only losses to the Buffalo Bills, who have been playing great football for the past 2 months now. So listen, you can panic if you want to. You can overreact to Kansas City with all these close games and barely beating Carolina. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going for the okie doke with Kansas City. Kansas City is fine. Kansas City, when it's time, when the lights go on in the playoffs, Kansas City will be right there at worst in the AFC Championship. I would be shocked if Kansas City is not at least in the AFC Championship for the 6th straight year. So do not fall for all these so-called experts, all the pundits, all these talking heads telling you that there are problems in Kansas City. Don't fall for it. That team they know how to win. And again, they know how to do something that 99% of these other teams just don't know how to do, and that's win, especially win big-time playoff games. Washington embarrasses himself. Well, hold on. Let's get to the Baltimore game first, then we'll see Washington for the last. Baltimore gets a big-time win over the Chargers, 30-23. Baltimore, 212 yards rushing, 389 yards total offense against a team that has been the best defensive team in terms of points allowed. Has been one of the top defensive teams against the run. They physically, after the halftime, they physically manhandled the Chargers in that game. The thing that's been impressive for Baltimore, and the thing that you have to be excited about if you're a Baltimore fan, has been their defense. Defensively, the past 2 games, they've played great. They were great against Pittsburgh. They just couldn't. Justin Tucker couldn't make a kick. Justin Tucker makes one of those 2 kicks that he misses, they win that game on the road. So 2 very good defensive performances in a row for the Baltimore Ravens, which had been, and their defense had been terrible this year, especially against the pass. They, in essence, shut down the Chargers offense in the second half. Chargers are a very good team. The Chargers are building. They don't have quite enough pieces offensively yet for them to be a Super Bowl contender, but give them an off season with a draft and with some couple free agents, they'll be right there next year. Herbert needs some more weapons on the outside. Defensively, they're right there. I mean, defensively, hardball and physicality with the defense, they're right there with the running game. They just don't have pieces on the outside yet to give Justin Herbert enough weapons to compete at the level to where you against a Kansas City or against a Baltimore, against a Buffalo. They're close, though. They're very close. But again, very impressive performance. Physical performance by Baltimore, and defensively they're returning to seemingly what they were last year. Again, they don't have to be dominant. Their offense, they have the best offense in football. Like, they have the best offense in football with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, some of the weapons they have on the outside. Andrews has picked it up over the past few weeks. They have the total in their totality, cumulatively, the best offense in football. That is a dominant offense. That is very hard to stop when they decide to run the football. The only thing that slows them down is when they decide to get cute and try to put the ball in Lamar's hands too much when they get away from Derrick Henry. Give Derrick Henry the football. It's very simple. Everything Derrick Henry is the key to that football team from an offense standpoint. I know Lamar is their best player. Lamar is the MVP. Lamar is great. We love Lamar, but Derrick Henry takes that offense to a whole nother level. You have to put 8 in the box to defend him, and you're going to get the one-on-one coverage. And the receivers, they have some fast receivers, have an above-average tight end, and Lamar Jackson has definitely improved as a pocket passer. So I like the direction that Baltimore is going in right now. Again, it was more about their defense than anything, and their defense has definitely improved. Now, too many penalties. They still are sloppy. They had 9 penalties for 100 yards. You're not beating Buffalo. You're not beating Kansas City. You might not even be able to beat Pittsburgh if you're playing that sloppily. That if you commit that many penalties in a playoff game, you cannot. They have to clean that up. They have to cut that down to about 5 for 50, or 4 for 30, 4 for 40 yards. You can't have 100 yards worth of penalties in a playoff game and expect to win. There are too many good teams in the AFC for that. Washington falls to Dallas 34-26. This was a boring game up until the fourth quarter, in which you saw 41 points scored. You saw a missed extra point to tie the game. You saw a kickoff. You saw a ball bounce to the a bobble kickoff to the returner, and he goes for 95 yards. It's just a insane 12 minutes to end the game. But regardless, Washington did not deserve to win this game whatsoever. Dallas did everything in the first half, the first quarter in particular, to give Washington this game. Aubrey, who is one of the lethalest kickers in all of football, especially from deep, with deep kicks over 50 yards, misses 2 field goals. Okay, one field goal was blocked, and he missed another one, right? Then you have, Dallas was sloppy with penalties, and Dallas did everything to say, here, Washington, blow us out and get your 8th win, but Washington could not take advantage of it. This thing with Cliff Kingsbury and his offense is falling off in the second half. It's a thing right now. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care. I heard Brian Mitchell talk about players got to make plays and not about the scheme. No. We've seen Cliff Kingsbury's teams when he was coaching Arizona. We saw how the offenses played in the first half of the season versus how they played in the second half. It is a thing, and it's going to be talked about until this offense picks it up. Right now, teams clearly have a beat on this offense. Now, the good news is that you did see Jaden Daniels get back to running the football and being confident about running the football, which tells me that he had like 6 carries for 60 yards, had a 17-yard touchdown run, which tells me that the Ribs are feeling a little bit better. But the bottom line is one of the problems with the Washington offense is they don't get their best player on the outside the ball nowhere nearly enough. Terry McLaurin is a legit top 10 receiver. Legitimately a top 10 receiver. Wherever you want to put in that top 10, I don't know, but he's a legit top 10 receiver. He only has been targeted through 12 games 74 times. That's not a lot of targets. That would rank 24th. That ranks 24th amongst eligible receivers in total targets. 24th. So that's a problem. Like, you have to find a way to get him the football. I don't understand. It shouldn't be hard. So to me, that's scheme. So you're not getting him the football. That's a problem with your scheme. So teams have adjusted to the offense. They've slowed down the Washington run over the course of the last 4 or 5 games. This thing, it really started, with the Giant game, and it's continued on, even though they won that game, and they haven't really played well. They haven't played a good game going back. The last complete game they played, you have to go back to the Carolina Panther game. The Giant game, they didn't play well. The Bear game, they could have easily lost. They lose to Pittsburgh and Philadelphia on the road. Well, the Pittsburgh game was at home, and they lose. This is the low point. Losing to a Dallas team that's playing for nothing but pride, that has a lame duck coach, that doesn't have his starting quarterback. It's just not any good. Dallas is terrible right now. They had no business losing this game to Dallas, but this is a rivalry. This is a divisional game. Dallas. Dallas was going to play well. I don't see how the spread was 10.5. The spread was 10.5, and I'm not a gambling man, but I certainly would have took those points. This game was definitely going to be within one possession for sure. Dallas has had their way with Washington over the past 4 to 5 years, especially in the Dak Prescott era, since he became quarterback. Became their starting quarterback, I think, in 2017, 2016, 2017. I think it was 2016. But this is the low point of the season for Washington. But the good news is they have everything in front of them. They're still 7-5. They will have a bye after this week. Week 14 is their bye after they play Tennessee, and they're going to get. We'll see. We're going to see what this team is made of. We're going to see what the coaching staff was. If Cliff Kingsbury can make the necessary adjustments that teams have adjusted. Listen, the NFL is an adjustment league. Teams adjust. These defensive coordinators, these head coaches, they have game film. They adjust. So if something's working, you have to have a plan B, plan C, plan D. They're going to take away. You're not going to be able to use plan A for 17 weeks. It's just not. That's just not how the NFL works. You have to have multiple ways that you can win games. You have to have multiple ways offensively that you can be able to attack teams. Because again, these teams are too well coached, too much film that's available to do one thing, and think that thing is going to work for the better part of 17 weeks. It's just impossible. Won the week, Saquon Barkley. Again, Barkley is on pace to break the rushing record. He, again, 255 yards, a career high. This is a perfect fit for him. This Philadelphia offensive line is at worst the second best offensive line in all football behind Detroit. They have perennial all pros, and this is despite losing Jason Kelsey, who's going to the Hall of Fame as a center, was one of the best centers, or maybe the best center in football for the past decade or so. This was a perfect fit because you can't, with those receivers on the outside, you cannot go. You can't put 8 in the box against Philadelphia. You just can't do it. And Barkley has stayed healthy to his credit and has been phenomenal. And then on top of it, you see what has happened to the Giants, where they decide not to pay Barkley. Then they paid Daniel Jones 2 years ago, and now Daniel Jones, the Giants are in the tank, and Daniel Jones is not even on the team anymore. He signed. He got picked up by Minnesota today. So everything has worked out perfectly for Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles. This thing has paid off more so than anybody. We thought. I mean, the Eagle fans were excited when he was signed, but I don't think anybody anticipated that he would be having possibly one of the great rushing years of all time in NFL history, and he's on pace to break Eric Dickerson's rushing record. So Saquon Barkley wins the week. Before we get to real thoughts with what's going on with Drake, just looking at the playoff picture in the NFL as we head into a week 13. So first, you have Thanksgiving games. You have 3 Thanksgiving games tomorrow. Chicago, Detroit, which is a snoozer like that. You can take a nap for that one. That's going to this is going to be that'll be yeah. No. That's not the snoozer. The snoozer is the Giants Dallas. That's the one that you can just go to sleep on. That would be 2 of the 3 are actually good. I actually like the Chicago. I think Chicago will play Detroit hard. Chicago has a lot of pride. I think they actually will hang in there with Detroit. Miami Green Bay would be a very good game. That would be Miami's playing better. Tua's gotten back to playing like he was last year. Seemingly has not had any ill effects from the concussion. He has Miami in the playoff mix from that standpoint. So that should be 2 or 3 games should be very good to come Thanksgiving. As far as the playoff picture goes, Kansas City still obviously controls his own destiny at 10-1. They are 5-1 in the conference. Buffalo, of course, if Kansas City slips, Buffalo can be right there as they, of course, got the tiebreaker. The thing to watch out for in the playoffs, of course, Denver, of course, Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh, uh, Pittsburgh is third with the division lead. Baltimore is fifth. Again, I think that division is going to come down to that Pittsburgh Baltimore game in a couple of weeks in late December. Texans are falling, like similar to the Cowboys, similar to the Commanders. Texans are falling right now. They had an awful loss to Tennessee. They lost. Losing a home game to Tennessee is just embarrassing. So keep your eye on Texans as they continue to fall. Miami is right there. Miami is only a game in the loss column behind Denver at 5-6, and they're playing well. So keep your eyes on Miami is making a possible playoff, is making a possible run to the playoffs. When that was just instant, we thought Miami was dead in the water a couple weeks ago. Going to the NFC, the race for home field is still up for grabs between Detroit and Philadelphia. Detroit, they play Philadelphia. Well, they are. Hold on, Detroit. Detroit doesn't play Philadelphia, so they don't meet. They don't meet this year. Philadelphia has a showdown against Baltimore. This coming up this week. So Detroit and Philadelphia are going to battle it out for home field. Detroit has an edge with the conference record at 6-1. At 6-1, Detroit does have a tougher road because their schedule, their schedule, that division is still their division is much tougher than Philadelphia's division. Keep your eyes on as the Commanders are fading. Arizona, keep your eyes on Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is 5-6. Tampa Bay beat Washington earlier in the opening game of the season in Tampa Bay. They both have 5-3 conference, 5-3 in the conference, but Tampa Bay would have the tiebreaker against Washington. So keep that there. Washington's only a game and a half. They have 2 more wins, which is important. Washington has 2 more wins. They're a game ahead in the loss column and 2 games in the win column, which is important because Washington is going to get a bye week. So keep your eyes on Tampa Bay in regards to making a possible run for a playoff spot. San Francisco is just right now. San Francisco is fading and fading fast at 5-6. And now again, I thought early in the season. I told you at the beginning when we were doing our previews of the NFC that San Francisco was going to take a step back. I didn't think it was going to be this big of a step back as far as possibly missing the playoffs. I thought they would make the playoffs and be like a first round exit. But they're in trouble because their division is not easy. That division, they're no easy. They don't have. Let me look at San Francisco's schedule moving forward. And remember, Brock Purdy will probably be back this week more than likely. Christian McCaffrey has not been the same player. They have a brutal schedule. My goodness, San Francisco is not going to make the playoffs. They have the Bears. They're at Buffalo on Sunday night. They host Chicago, host the Rams, at Miami, host the Lions at the end of the season at Arizona. There are no gimmies on. They can lose any one of those games. Their weakest game probably is against the Bears. That's probably their weakest opponent. That's probably their easiest game. And they have it. That is a tough schedule to end the season. And again, they're last in the division right now. They have again, that team just hasn't looked right all season long. Lost a bunch of close games, lost games in the fourth quarter. Their divisional record, they are 1-3 in the division. They are by far the worst division record out of all those teams. So San Francisco's in a lot of trouble right now, moving forward. So so San Francisco could be, Washington is fading. Tampa Bay could be making a run in the AFC. And by the way, Tampa Bay's schedule is, Tampa Bay has Panthers, Raiders, Chargers, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints. It's not a hard schedule. So Tampa Bay could creep up and get a playoff spot. So there's certainly these races will go down probably to the last week of the season. Real thoughts. Okay, so one didn't want to bring this up because I didn't want Drake to step on the Kendrick the Kendrick aspect, what Kendrick has done as far as coming out with the album and what have you. But Drake right now is trying to take on UMG. He's filed a petition against UMG Music, claiming that. Now, keep in mind, UMG Universal Music Group distributes both music for Kendrick Lamar and Drake are under the Universal Music Group. So that's they distribute music for both artists. So keep that in mind. He's accusing Universal Music Group of boasting not like us with streams, with in terms of streams and inflating those streams with artificial bots. Um, he's accusing them of pay to play, which is a payola. If you don't know anything about the radio industry, payola. There's a Payola Act of 1934 that was designed to not have it's illegal to pay radio stations to play your music without payment or with legal payment. He's been accused. He accuses them of there's also petitions claims that a podcaster was paid $2,500 by Interscope, which Kendrick Lamar is under Interscope, of paying them $2,500 to use bots in order for Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us to reach Spotify. Spotify, Not Like Us, reached 30 million streams on the day of its release at Spotify. Not Like Us reached 30 million streams. He also accuses social media influencers, and including the NFR podcast, which is a very popular podcast, has hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube, to promote Not Like Us. Not Like Us has done 900 million streams, which makes it the most streamed diss track in the history of Spotify. So, give you a little context. Drake signed what reportedly, this is not an official number, what reportedly was a $400 million deal with UMG back in 2022. Okay, so the why? Why would Drake do this? Now, keep this in mind because I've seen this I've seen this misreported, and I've seen a lot of people get confused by this. This is not a lawsuit. It has not reached a level of lawsuit. It's a petition. I read it. It's 17 pages. Is available. Is available. It's a 17-page document. That's PDF. It's available to the public. I read it. Today. It is not a lawsuit. It is a petition. It's starting off as a petition. So this is not a lawsuit. It is not directed towards Kendrick Lamar. This is toward this is a petition against looking into UMG, Spotify, and Apple. So that's another very important thing. A lot of people getting confused with that. This is not direct. This is not a lawsuit against Kendrick Lamar. It's not a defamation suit against the song Not Like Us. Here's where the reason why Drake is doing this, right? Let's go beyond the aspect of him being a sore loser for the loss that he took in the battle that he had back in May, right? Let's put that aside. The reason why Drake is doing this is for the first time in over a decade, for the first time since he has been separated from Lil Wayne and Nicki Minaj, since he branched off by himself as an individual artist. For the first time, like I said, in over a decade, he is no longer the top guy. So not only did Kendrick Lamar, we've known for years that Kendrick Lamar was a superior rapper to Drake, and it was from an artistry standpoint, just was surpassed Drake. It had been, we understood that for years. And anybody in the game outside of Drake stands understands that Kendrick Lamar is a better rapper than Drake. That's not even comparable. Lyrically, whatever. Lyrically, aesthetically, it doesn't matter. He's always been better. But the one thing Drake always had was the numbers. Drake always had the numbers. Even when Drake lost the battle to Pusha back in 2018, not a big deal, but really not a big deal because I'm still the biggest rapper in the world, one of the biggest artists in the world. Pusha, yeah, you got it, but they'll forget about you in a couple weeks. And we do it. Like, we didn't forget about that battle. That battle I mean, we kind of people were kind of bringing it up during the Kendrick battle, but that did not hurt Drake. Losing the Pusha did not hurt Drake as far as him being the top guy in the industry. It did. This losing this battle and the way he lost it took him from 1 to 2. And in Drake's world, going from 1 to 2, that might as well be going. He might as well went from 1 to 100. Okay, Drake has never operated not being the top guy. Right now, Kendrick is the top guy. I mentioned earlier those numbers for this GNX album is on pace to be one of the most streamed hip hop albums of all time. It's on pace to be one of the most. It's projected to be the most streamed hip hop album of 2024. Okay, and Drake cannot handle that. He can't handle not only losing this. He can't handle it. Period. So, and this tells you about who Drake is, because when Jay-Z lost to Nas, Jay-Z just simply went and he came out with 2 terrible diss albums, like Super Ugly. He came out with some other shit that didn't even break it. That was just so bad it didn't even get national acclaim. Like, it didn't even get attention. Jay-Z came out with some horrible diss. Beyond Super Ugly was horrible, but he came out with another one that didn't even get much play. That's how bad it was. But he still went back to the studio. Like, he still made quality music well after that. He still came out Blueprint 2, which had some hits and misses, but was maybe an underrated album. He still came out with the Black Album. He still came out 444, American Gangster. Like, Jay-Z's career was fine after that when he lost that battle. So that would be the hip hop thing to do for somebody who actually loved hip hop and cared about hip hop and was about hip hop. That's the problem with Drake. Drake has never been about hip hop. He's never loved hip hop. It's only been about what hip hop can do for him, or the benefits, the women, the money, the prestige, the awards. That's all. That's Drake cares about what hip hop has done for him in terms of his popularity. And he's at his heart, he's probably a pop star. He is a pop star at heart. That has crossed over into he's crossed over into being one of the biggest hip hop stars of the decade. The biggest hip hop star of the past decade. So if you think that going against the industry, I've heard a lot of this too, that this is going to be a game changer, that Drake somehow, by taking on the industry, is going to expose things. First of all, everybody knows that streams and there are bots and streams. We talked about that during the political campaign, about bots and artificial, and you see that on different podcasts. You'll see that on YouTube. You'll see the bots if you follow certain shows. That's not new. That's not groundbreaking news that there are bots. You can't accuse somebody of doing something that you've been the beneficiary of, because if you don't think Spotify and these groups and the UMG has pushed Drake's albums with illegal with artificial bots, like, you got to be kidding me. So he's going to, from that standpoint alone, he's going to lose this battle. Period. He's going to lose this battle because Drake doesn't have any friends in the industry. You might have some artists do some tweet like, "Yo, we got you, Drake," on Twitter, but nobody's going to risk their careers or their money to go fight alongside with Drake to try to quote unquote take down the industry. No. It's not going to happen. Drake is a guy who, again, he doesn't have, like Stringer Bell at the end of his reign in The Wire. He did not have any friends. He does not have friends in the industry. Drake has pissed off a lot of people within the industry. Drake's friendships are transactional. Is what Drake can do for them, or what is it more about what Drake can do for them, or what he can do for the other artists. All right, I put you on. You want to jump on my song? All right, that's gonna boost your, that's gonna boost your popularity or your ratings, or you put money in your pocket. Drake don't got guys and people in the industry that's gonna ride for him to take on UMG or to take on Spotify or to take on the music industry. No, 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 no. That's where the delusion comes in. So he is no longer the guy in the industry. That's it. That reign is done. It was it was an all-time great reign. Like no rap artist has been on top as long as Drake has been on top ever. Not even Jay-Z. So at some point that reign had to come to an end. And Spotify, UMG decided. And by the way, when you read the petition, the stuff that Drake is saying is not out of like it's not crazy. Yeah, I can see a situation where UMG saw the cultural impact that Not Like Us had on it and said, "Hey, we gotta this is something. This is a once in a decade type song. We gotta push this song. Like we really gotta push this song." Kendrick won this battle. He got the Super Bowl. He booked the Super Bowl. Yeah, I definitely could see the powers that be pushing this song, giving it an extra push. Not to the level that Drake says it. Not to the point to where he made this song a cultural. You can listen. Either a song is a slap or it's not. You can only push a song so far with artificial stats and bots and stuff like that. The song has to slap. That's number one. The song has to. You had pastors and churches talking about this song. This song reached everybody. This song touched everybody. Everybody. This song was argued one of the biggest songs of the decade so far, as far as the impact that it's had. This is 2024 as we head towards the halfway point of this decade, of the 2020s decade. This song is one of the most impactful songs of this decade. Period. Especially in hip hop, in all of hip hop. So, I can see UMG giving it a little push, but UMG also has given Drake albums and his songs, individual songs, a push. That's the problem. That's what Drake cannot see. That doesn't realize, dude, you're fighting a battle that is an unwinnable battle that he's fighting. This thing might reach a lawsuit. Don't be surprised if this doesn't reach the point to where it's not a lawsuit. Don't be surprised if somebody just tells Drake like, "Yo, you better chill. You better chill. You really want this battle because he's going to be on his own. Isn't that like Drake? Drake is not Braveheart. He don't got the people. He's not Maximus from Gladiator. He does not have. He don't have the crowd. The Drake stands have y'all. The Drake stands, y'all have no power in this. Y'all have no power. Y'all can sit up here and stand by Drake. Y'all can sit up here. Yeah, Kendrick. Yeah, he won the battle. In the terms, when it comes to litigation, when it comes to this industry shit, the Drake stands have no power. Zero. It doesn't matter how many fans he has or stands he has. So this is a case of a guy who can't handle not being the top guy. He can't handle it. And again, I question his. Look how he's moved since this battle has taken place. The stupid post, the cryptic post, the DeMar DeRozan, take DeMar DeRozan's jersey down or something. That bullshit. The talking under his breath when DeMar DeRozan came back to Toronto. Like getting on streams with these random people who may be famous in terms of Twitch and stuff like that, but just weird moves in general that has nothing to do with hip hop, has nothing to do with taking the L or getting in the studio. Drake came out with a 3-pack in July. Yeah, one of the songs was hot, but it didn't. I mean, we forgot about it in 2 weeks. The best thing for Drake to do would be to go away and just make dope music. And just make dope music, or go away for the rest of 2024 and come back strong in 2025. What he is doing right now is 2024 belongs to Kendrick, period, point blank. But he's actually giving Kendrick a jump on 2025 with this. He's actually giving Kendrick a jump on taking over 2025. So, and you could tell Drake doesn't have any real friends in the industry or people that he listens to that would say like, "Yo, this is not the move." Drake, Aubrey, this ain't the move, man. I know you took the L. I know this hurt, but let's go back to the lab. Let's regroup. Let's make some dope music. Take some time off. This ain't the move. Whoever's advising, I don't think anybody's advising him. I think Drake is advising himself, and he has a bunch of yes people around him. He either has people around him that kiss his ass, or no people around him at all that he doesn't listen to. So this is not going to end well for Drake. I'm telling you right now, in any shape, way, or form. And I'm telling y'all, if y'all think that this is going to change music, how music practices are done as far as streaming, and you think Spotify, UMG, and Apple are going to move differently, then you're clueless. You're absolutely. This is the music industry is. If this were casino terms, the music industry is the house. The house always wins. The house always wins. Okay. This is not, individuals do not take out, when it comes to a battle versus individuals against institutions, institutions win all the time against individuals. If you want to start a movement, if you want to start a revolution, you need to become an institution in order to take out an institution. Like Martin Luther King became an institution with the amount of power that he had when they did Montgomery, when they did the bus boycott. That became it. It wasn't just him by himself. He became thousands of people joined him. So Drake is not that. We know that. Drake is an individual, and he's been an individual for the better part of a decade in regards to music. He's been a talented individual, but he's not. Drake is, like I said, if you think people in the music industry, artists, are going to go up here and connect with Drake to take on the music industry, you're out of your mind. They don't fuck with Drake like that. Period. They do not fuck with him like that. This guy, I mean, how many rappers women of rappers that he didn't mess with, how many people that he didn't fucked over or talked about or just done. Like, Drake is not a popular guy in the industry. He's been an influential guy because of the success he's had, but he's not well liked within the industry. He's not. So Drake is not going to take down this industry of UMG and the music industry and some of the poor business practices that music has always had. We know. Listen, this is not new. Music has been run by gangsters in the past. We know music has had some illicit practices as far as business goes. That's been accepted. Drake has been a part of that. To be honest with you. He's benefited from that. That's the thing. He's benefited from some of those practices, to be honest with you. So, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. And I'm telling you right now, Drake's career from now moving forward will never look the same. Ever. Trust me. Ever. And by the way, you don't stay on top for a decade. If y'all think he was on top for over a decade just because of his talent, you clearly don't understand the music industry, how business works out. The powers that be wanted Drake to be on top for a decade because of what he could do for them. Now that he's tried to fight back against that system, they be like, okay, good. Not like us, play it again. Or they'll move on. This is what Drake doesn't realize. No person, period, point blank, not Kendrick Lamar, no person that has ever walked the face of this earth that in hip hop is bigger than hip hop. Nobody's bigger than hip hop. Not Puffy. No one is bigger than hip hop. No one person is bigger than the music industry. Period. The music industry, hip hop will move on without Drake being the top guy. They're fine. Hip hop is still one of the most popular genres in all the music in the world. People will move the fuck on. I promise you. Hip hop does not need Drake. It doesn't. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. And again, of course, we will follow this very closely, and any new things that break on this, we'll certainly discuss it in a future podcast, maybe on some Instagram lives as well. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your weekend. I will see you next time. So long.